Well, good Monday night. Good evening to everyone. Welcome to tonight, Monday, November 8th edition of Communications and Cigars. I'm your host, John Crook. Thanks for tuning in this week. Hey, we are back. We are live. We got actually a kind of an interesting episode that was actually spurred out of some comments that came from the episode we did last week. So last week we did get some people in a tizzy about talking about the parts of the ECFR. So the electronic, and I'm referencing my notes because there's a ton of notes on what we talked about last week and what we're kind of sort of going to talk about again this week here. And basically what it boiled down to is that a lot of people said, hey, um, were you being radio police or what were you trying to do? And no, we weren't trying to be radio police. So last week, once again, we talked about it, the different parts. So the parts that cover FRS, which are part 95, part 97, part 90, part 80 for Marine Band, even on there. And a lot of people said, well, you covered a lot of them. It was really good. Thanks for all the good feedback. But now that you talked about all these, what is the best one or the best radio service possibly for me to use? So that's why I decided, what, this week it's going to be really good. And we're going to now answer the question, which radio service is right for you? And not all radio services are going to be right for everyone on there. So that's why I said, hey, let's do this. Let's get this topic out and about, because as we're going to kind of go into here a little bit, obviously being from northern Wisconsin here, we have what we call Widow's Week coming up here pretty quick, and that's the week of Thanksgiving. And for those of you that live in Wisconsin or live in the upper Midwest, that is also known as the Wisconsin whitetail deer hunting season. So that's when everybody goes out and hunts. But I thought, hey, it would be really great if we kind of get some of this stuff out of the way, because coming up here, I think maybe in the next week or so, we're going to be talking about like some ideas on using the radio service that's going to work best for you, and some kind of things that we're going to throw out there saying, hey, wait, if I'm using this radio, this might be a good idea to do this and this and this and this and this and this. So with that, tonight's episode, which radio service is right for you? So let's first off, it's communications. That's going to be your communications topic, and cigars. As you notice, I am once again downstairs because it is a nice balmy 43 degrees out right now, and the garage isn't quite set up just yet for our studio or our portable studio. So we're going to be inside a little bit tonight, and inside the house, I do not smoke cigars. So that's rule one there. So we're not going to do that tonight. But I do have an interesting fact that I came up with. So if I can't have a cigar, I'm going to tell you an interesting fact about it. And this was actually watching TV and watching something that was educational for once. So if anybody that knows me, that's, if it's not James Bond, that could be something kind of weird on there. But with that being said, educational wise, did you know that the cigar industry alone is over a $10 million business and industry per year? $10 million easily, just in related into cigars and the manufacturing of them and shipping them and everything in regards to cigars. And I was actually watching that because it was really, I was like, wow, you take back, and then you start to see that there's a lot of people that do smoke cigars, from famous athletes and stuff. Michael Jordan actually did a very good one that, if you are following me on YouTube, that interview will come up where it's him, and I forgot who else is interviewing him. They're just sitting back enjoying a cigar on there. Numerous other people, celebrities and stuff. And then it kind of hit me. I'm like, yeah, I could easily see how it could be over a $10 million industry on there. But let's get into some of the things. I see people are popping up in there. So first of all, good evening, Chuck. KK6 USY Ham Radio Adventures. K9 KMV, the unlucky ham. Ben Manley, good evening. Anthony, I always slaughter your name. Bersura. I'm sorry if I slaughtered it. No offense, Anthony. FEP Labs Radio, good evening, sir, on there. Hey, and also too, I want to tell you this. Monday nights are busy. On there, a lot of you I know are coming on over from TO, temporary offline, and Ham Radio Dude. They were just doing a show on there. So thanks for coming over to my channel there. Hey, support my friends in fellow YouTubers and ham radio operators that are out there and stuff like that on there. And don't forget Coffee and Ham Radios. I'll give a shout out to them. I always like watching that show on Saturday mornings on there, and they have some other shows during the week on there too. So Coffee and Ham Radios, definitely check them out on Saturday morning. And Chuck or anybody on there from Ham Radio, from Coffee and Ham Radios, go ahead and drop your link in there. B. Sarah. Okay. Thank you, Anthony, for doing that on there. And Striker, K7IBU, thanks for hopping in here tonight. So let's dive into tonight's episode. And we're going to kind of go through each of the radio services once again here. And we're going to be talking about all of them, okay, with the exception of public safety, because you really can't use public safety unless you're a public safety officer. We did talk about there are certain situations that you don't need to be the traditional police, fire, and EMS in order to be able to use public safety frequencies. But in the realm of things is you as an individual, that's what we're talking about. You as an individual, what can you do there? So the first thing to kind of bring back to memory here from kind of, we touched on it last week, is remember that there are actually basically two types of licensure or usage of frequencies. There's license by use, which means that just by you purchasing the radio, you are automatically licensed to use that radio, of course, within the FCC laws and requirements. And then there is actual licensure required, which is going to be like your business band that you have to purchase a license, GMRS, which you have to purchase a license, or amateur radio, which you actually have to take a test and pay a testing fee and stuff, but you actually have to take a test for that license. Otherwise, tonight, when we talk about FRS, MURS, MURS, multi-user radio service, and CB, even Marine, those are all licensed by usage. So you don't need to get a license for those in operations on there. So let's actually jump into the first, which is probably going to be the most common. And once again, if I'm not looking at you, I apologize. I got a bunch of notes up here because you can really kind of get lost into the maelstrom of things here. So the first one we're going to talk about is the FRS, Family Radio Service. That's what FRS stands for. And all this information I'm getting here, I should almost actually share it with you. It's from fcc.gov/wireless/bureau-division/mobility divisions. But if you actually Google the actual name of the radio service that you're using, you'll see that FCC link come up. So the reason I point that out is because if I had the Dragnet theme, I would play the Dragnet theme right now, because there are people out there who are self-proclaimed radio police. And we're not talking about that tonight. We're not going to discuss and get into, oh, you can do this, you can do this, and you can use this radio. No, just like last week, we're not going to get into that. We're going to talk and say, hey, does this fit the core of the idea of what you need in a radio service? So, definition: FRS is a private two-way radio or two-way short-distance voice and data communication service for facilitating family and group activities. Okay, we went over that last week's episode. It is in the UHF range. Now, FRS is kind of that, and that's why it's called Family Radio Service, is kind of that great functionality for your family usage. So a good example I would give to say is like, think of this. You're going to Mall of America, or you're going to, you're going out in a park, or you're going for a walk around your neighborhood, or something where you need to communicate with the family. FRS is probably going to be that good option for you. Now, FRS just recently went underneath a change, I can kind of say, like almost a growing pain. And it actually happened back in May 18th of 2017. Where they actually increased the power output on FRS radios. Prior to that, all FRS radios were listed as 500 milliwatts, so basically a half a watt. And that was on all channels 1 through 22. Now, let me go ahead and clarify 22 FRS channels. Channels 1 through 7 all are in the 462 megahertz range. So it starts out at 462, 5625, 462, 5875, 6125, 6375, 6625, 6875, and 7125. But if you're kind of a radio geek, you know that in the UHF portion, they always mirror frequencies 5 megahertz apart on there. So in that case is basically channels 8 through 14 are 467 5625, 467 5875, 6125, 63, blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Okay. So those are kind of how channels 1 through 14 are. 1 through 7 are the 462 ones, and then the 8 through 14 are actually the mirrored 5 megahertz ones up from there. Now, with that being said, 15 through 22 are kind of a unique in the radio. And what those are is 15 through 22. I said it wrong. 15 through 22 are actually the output frequencies of the repeater. So 462.55, 462.575, 462.6, 462.625, 65, 675, 70, and 725. So with that, they said, okay, wait a minute, you can use those frequencies. And now 1 through 7 and 15 through 22 are a max of 2 watts on there, which is comparable to half a watt. That's a pretty significant increase. However, 8 through 14 is a half a watt only. It's still only half a watt only. And the reason being is take a look at this. On a GMRS repeater, let's use 462.550. The input is 467.550. If I'm transmitting on FRS channel 8, which is 467.5625, I am only going to be 0.0125 kilohertz away from the input of that repeater. So therefore, that's why they have a lower power limitation. So how does that work? What's the importance of actually saying that? Well, the reason the importance of saying that is that when you are out and about and you are going to be using FRS, once again, UHF low powered frequencies, okay, you have 2 watts on 1 through 7 and you have 2 watts on 15 through 22. So those are going to be the channels that are going to get more distance for you, more range for you than compared to channels 8 through 14, which are only going to be half a watt. Now, one thing that FRS has, which does help, which a lot of people do not use, is what we call PL or DPL codes, sometimes referred to as CTCSS or DCS codes. So when you're looking at those kind of tones on there, you have to really think about it, because what those are going to do is they're sometimes called privacy codes. Okay. And you'll see that's how they are listed sometimes in manuals on there. They don't give you any sort of privacy whatsoever. FRS does not allow encryption. It used to allow encryption, but they actually got rid of that. So FRS radios these days are not allowed to being able to use encryption of any sorts on there. So that's where some people have fallen into that kind of that trickery of saying, oh, it's a PL, it's a private line, it's a private code. No, all that means is if you set that code on that frequency, so let's say channel 1, code 1, anybody else who has another radio that sets it to channel 1, code 1, they talk, you'll hear them, you talk, they'll hear you. But if someone's, let's say in Scannerland, someone has a scanner or someone uses an FRS radio and they don't have privacy code 1 and they have privacy code 0, which can monitor the whole frequency, they're going to hear you talk. Now, the positives of FRS. FRS is readily available anywhere. Walmart, Target, Costco, Sam's Club, Best Buy, you name it. FRS radios are sold all over the place. There was at one time FRS, I remember being so popular that they literally, you'd go into like Best Buy, for an example, they would have like a whole huge, like 5-foot section of FRS radios, and every Motorola, Midland, Cobra, Kenwood even made some. I mean, just everybody and their brother made an FRS radio of some sort on there, or they made 1,000,001 different types of FRS models on there. So with that, FRS easy to use, readily available, gets you that short range UHF, so pounds through buildings a little bit better, all those kind of nice things there. But drawback is everybody has FRS radios. And now with some of the rule changes, it actually can be used by businesses. So if you are in a heavy industrial area, like I live near an industrial park area, not too far away, but relatively close. In that case, I can actually sometimes sit with my FRS radio on my porch and just with a standard antenna on that comes, fixed antennas that come on the radios. Okay. I'm not using like a scanner or something. I can actually hear the different companies using the FRS channels for business on there. And I mean, there's other, disadvantages to FRS, and there's other advantages to FRS. I would say the biggest advantage with FRS is that if you are getting together with a group of people that you don't normally hang around with and you need to be able to communicate, guess what? You are going to have an FRS radio. They're going to have an FRS radios. It's all standard. You don't need to, all you have to do is really pick a frequency, and you just have to pick a tone if you're going to go ahead and use a tone on there. So that's kind of where it all kind of comes into play of the advantages and disadvantages of FRS. Now, lots of times FRS radios, like also too around my block, I will hear the kids playing with it. And if you've ever played with an FRS, so they have like a call tone, you push it and it's like doo 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 doo. There are some times where I don't know, the kids just get excited about that. Not my kids. My kids know how to use radios. But the other kids, there's like, you'll just sit there and all of a sudden you just hear like 30 seconds of constant doo 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 doo. And it's like, okay, guys, come on. So yeah, FRS is really kind of interesting. Like I said, a lot of people use them, easy radios to get in there. And that might be your choice, something that you need to do or you need to think about as being, hey, I need this for my communications. But let's take a next step. So that's FRS. That's, once again, a service which is licensed by rule. You purchase the radios. That's kind of you saying, hey, you're going to use the radios correctly on there. Now, the next one that is the best one to talk about is GMRS. Now, GMRS, actually, General Mobile Radio Service, shares, once again, some frequencies with the FRS band. So, once again, we talked about channels 15 through 22 are the outputs of the GMRS repeaters. Now, the reason that this happened is because there may come times where a GMRS operator needs to speak with an FRS operator. Now, the FRS operator, no license required. GMRS operator, they need to purchase a license. In the relative scheme of things, the license for a GMRS radio or service, I should say, is very inexpensive. It's really $70 for 10 years. So if you really do the math, that's $7 a year. In addition, your GMRS license is going to cover everyone underneath your house. So, for example, myself, my wife, my kids, they all go underneath my GMRS license. Okay. Now, one thing I will say this is that no one under the age of 18 can technically be licensed under this kind of case and situation. So what would happen is that if you have a person in the household under the age of 18, they're not going to be able to get that license. It would have to be an adult, and then the adult would be responsible. So I'm responsible if my kids screw up on the GMRS license. But what that does is that covering everybody underneath your household really kind of opens that up. So for GMRS, if I needed to, okay, I could be in my vehicle with my GMRS radio. My wife can be in her vehicle with her GMRS radio. We would go and ID with both of the same license. Okay, because we're both under that same house. Now, if my dad doesn't live with me, okay? If my dad wanted to talk to me on GMRS, guess what he has to do? He has to go ahead and he has to buy his own GMR license, and GMRS license can then talk to me. We could talk to him and he could talk to me. And then at the end, we would sign with both of our licenses, or license call signs, I should say, on there. But GMRS is going to give you that more oomph on there. And the reason I say is because now we're talking 50-watt radios. Now we're talking 5-watt handhelds. So now a handheld, which, by the way, FRS only has handhelds. They do make some quote unquote base radios, but they're only putting out the 2 watts or the half a watt, where GMRS, they're putting out 5 watts on a handheld, or they are putting out 50 watts on the mobile. In addition, GMRS can also operate with repeaters. So now you've just really expanded the range of that, because now, hey, man, I could really get far on 2 mobile radios, right? I'm over here. My wife's over here. We got 50 watts. We got antennas on there. Yeah, we're going to be able to easily communicate across a couple miles. No problem, especially if it's open flatland too. But let's say we're further apart. Let's say we're 20 miles apart or something like that. Can I go radio to radio? Well, maybe, probably not, depending. But if there's a GMRS repeater, I can hit that GMRS repeater. If my wife knows I'm on that GMRS repeater, now we're communicating through a repeater. And that really, really, really expands the range of it. In addition, lots of dedicated GMRS users out there. And I want to say thank you to the GMRS users. And here's why. GMRS users, it's a family based radio service. So you can't be conducting business on GMRS. Okay. It is basically for communications, general mobile radio service, where you share the frequencies, share the everything in regards to with other GMRS users. But there are some GMRS users that put up repeaters out of their own pocket. They take the time to purchase the antenna, purchase the coax, purchase the duplexers, purchase the repeaters, locate the sites, coordinate and agree to being on the sites and everything like that, and then put those repeaters up. Now, some of them are private GMRS repeaters, but then there are others that are actually doing it for the betterment. Hey, I have a GMRS repeater in an area. Come on through, use my repeater. Once again, there's others that are saying, hey, myself, my friends, we're using this repeater. We put it up just for ourselves. Don't use it. Okay, that's fine. Not a problem. But people are doing this out of their own in order to be able to communicate or increase their communication range. So thank you to the GMRS operators that put up the repeaters and allow people to operate them. Personally, from me, thank you. Now, once again, GMRS does cross communicate with FRS, but realistically, if you are going ahead and looking for something that can help with your family, once again, that's kind of that bigger chunk, a little bit more power, a little bit more range. Once again, can't use it for business, no encryption on there, nothing like that. But still, family communications, it really, really does make a difference, and it really does make range possible, is the best way to say it. All right, let's move on to MURS. MURS stands for Multi-User Radio Service. And what this kind of did is this kind of actually came out of, once again, I kind of talked about last week, Radio Shack had, and I remember Radio Shack pretty well, but Radio Shack used to rebrand some Motorola radios. I think they were called the Expo radios or something like that. Some of them just had the volume knob on the top. It was only one channel. Some had a little toggle switch on there. I think Motorola called them the P100s or something on there. So I'm sure if someone's in the chat here, they'll be able to confirm or know what I'm talking about. But what in that case is that they used to have these gold, or I should say these dot frequencies, DOT frequencies, and these star frequencies, STRA or STAR, can't even spell star, STAR frequencies. And what they were is they were kind of predefined, preset business radio frequencies. Well, that's part of what MURS kind of became a part of. So you have FRS, which is UHF, low power. Okay, you have GMRS, which is UHF, but higher power. MURS is different. MURS is in the VHF range, and MURS only has 5 channels. Now, I will tell you, in northern Wisconsin here, MURS radios are going to reach a heck of a lot further than FRS radios. And the reason being is VHF tends to have a little bit of a better reach than penetration. UHF is better penetration than reach. Hands down, that's how it works, okay? But with MURS, you have 5 frequencies in the VHF range: 151.82, 151.88, 151.94, 154.57, and 154.6 or 600. Those are your MURS frequencies. Now, they are restricted to 2 watts, but they are VHF. And if you have, a lot of VHF radios that are out there on the market, old public safety radios, they can easily put down to 2 watts and they can be used on the MURS frequencies. Now, certain things do require, especially with MURS, a little bit with the FRS, some of the radios do need to be what they call narrow banded. But if you're buying a bubble pack FRS radios, you don't need to worry about that. That's all set, ready to go. With MURS, there's a few bubble pack radios, as I call it there. And what I mean by a bubble pack radio is that you go to the store and whatever, and they're selling you MURS radios. Either they're selling you a 2-pack of MURS radios or they're selling a MURS radio. It's all pre-programmed and set up for you. So channel 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, select your privacy codes on there. Now, the one thing with MURS, though, is that they have some businesses. I'm not going to say the names, okay? So if you know them, good. But there are some businesses that were originally licensed on the MURS frequencies prior to the frequencies being turned into MURS. They still have operational authority and I don't want to say jurisdiction, but kind of jurisdiction to a degree to use those frequencies because they're licensed. In addition, their license may allow them to transmit at higher power levels than actually what you could do as MURS. Some of these frequencies that are in use of MURS, there might be people or businesses or whatever licensed on there that's going to allow you to talk at 5, 10, 15, 25, even 50 watts on there. And guess what? As a MURS user, by buying the MURS radio or using the MURS frequencies, once again, licensed by use, you agree to not cause interference to those other users. So when you're using MURS, yeah, it's a lot of the MURS frequencies are clean. I will tell you this. No, maybe this will see how big popular I am, because MURS channels 1, 2, and 3, 151, 82, 88, and 94. Not a lot of people use those frequencies out there. So you can really find a lot of open channels for you to use out there. But MURS also does double duty. So MURS, once again, the common use of is short range or short distance two-way communication using handheld radios or data type communications. Now, the reason I say that is I kind of think I brought it up maybe last week or so. Garmin used to make this thing, and I think they still do, this dog collar that was called the Astro series, where it was a combination of their GPS unit and a MURS receiver. And what would end up happening with this MURS receiver on there is that it would go and basically the dog's collar would transmit on one of the MURS channels with the GPS coordinates that the dog's collar was receiving. So GPS to the dog's collar goes out on MURS frequency. The handheld unit receives it on the MURS frequency. And then what it did is that it compared your GPS signal and the dog's GPS signal, and you could actually see where you're at. When I trained my beloved canine Gage, when we were doing search and rescue, I used that collar and it was absolutely amazing. It was absolutely amazing because then I got to see where Gage was at. Side funny note, I then upgraded my dog to a cell phone, and yes, I actually did. My search and rescue dog actually did have a cell phone, and I put the cell phone on his collar, and the reason I did that way was because then afterwards I could actually take the SD card and see where he was actually tracking with the GPS. But anyways, so yes, my family plan literally was a family plan which included dogs. All right. Anyways, so with that being said, MURS is pretty clean, and like I said, you can get pretty far on MURS. I'll have to get the family involved. So if my wife is watching, we may have to do some exchange of you helping with some radio examples and me buying you some craft items with that. But I might try to do a video out in real life here. I'll see how that goes there. But we'll see on there. But you'll see, MURS is really good. I personally like MURS for hands down on there. So let's talk about another one. Another unforgotten now anymore. I guess I don't even know how to say it anymore. Is CB radio, and the reason I put it that way is because CB radio is kind of a situation where it was kind of left by the sides of the road because it was used by truckers. It was used by this. People called it the chicken band and all this kind of stuff. And CB always got like a bad rap. And I never believed that. As a matter of fact, my scanner, when I go on a long trip, I will make sure I have my scanner. I don't make sure I have the scanner program with channel 19 in there so I can hear it, because it does one of two things. Truckers do communicate with one another greatly. Okay. CB radio is great for that. All righty. I'll give you an example. This morning, overnight, I played a paramedic shift. For those that know me, I am a paramedic for my community. We had a semi truck that got caught on fire. The trailer caught on fire this morning. The guy was pulling off. I found out that the guy called out on CB. Another semi stopped, helped him offload his trailer. So it was just a big refrigerator trailer. Got the trailer off, made sure his cab got about a quarter of a mile down the road, and only the trailer burned. Not the semi-tractor, not the driver. No one was hurt. We just watched and smelt the horrible Chinese food burn. I'm not having lo mein for another week, at least on there. But with that being said, CB is actually really cool because CB just recently, boom, came back in the spotlight. And that's what the discussion about how FM is going to come to CB. For the longest time, CB radio was AM and single sideband. AM of the most common one on there. That's what people usually associated AM, a CB radio with, was AM. But now with it coming back, it's really starting to I think it's going to start to spur more things on there, because CB has 40 channels on there. Each channel is 10 kilohertz on there. So it starts out like channel 1 is 26965, and then channel 2 is 26975, and then 985, and they go up and up and up. It doesn't quite go in order like a lot of people would tend to necessarily think, but they are roughly kind of spaced into that band on there. Now, some people may remember, depending on how old you are and how long you've been in there, CB is referred to 11 meters because it fits right in between the 10 and the 12 meter band on there. And, there's multiple reasons of why CB is, how it is and set up is and everything like that. And with that being said, CB, and Andy, you hit it on here, FM works great in UK and Europe. They've been doing CB FM for a long time over there. And finally, someone hopped up and said, hey, why don't we do FM over here? Now, CB is restricted in power output on there. So the operations for CB, there are certain things about the antennas and everything that you have. There are power things on there. But it's kind of one of those, like, you think about it, you're going to get different radio response, different radio ranges and everything like that on AM, of course, versus single sideband versus FM. That's why, if you take a look in the amateur radio world, we have those things on there. But what I'm going to tell you is that it's going to be a situation where you're going to see this change in CB. I really feel personally it's going to come, because what you're going to do is you're going to have people that are so familiar with it, because FRS, GMRS, MURS, non-digital FM communications. All righty. FM sounds different than AM, obviously. If you haven't listened to radio, you I don't know where you've been at, but it does sound differently on there. But I think that getting to that FM sounding quality is going to really change people and how they use it. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a situation on there. And so FM since 1981 in the UK. Yeah, so congrats to the UK for getting it going up there and doing FM and CB long before us. So I think really, if you're into something in your hobby and you want to see it, keep an eye on how this is going to progress. Now, one of the things that it is there is, remember, just because we can do something, we have to get the manufacturers jumping on it. So, Uniden, I'm not even going to go into there because it's been such a long time since I actually owned a CB, but mine were realistic. Yes, once again, Radio Shack. But like the Uniden CB, that's also a scanner, that has always been intriguing of mine. I've always wanted to buy one of those, but I can never just justify it. But we're going to see how Uniden and some of the other CB manufacturers are going to come. Hopefully, it's going to be something that's going to come soon, and we can start going ahead and taking advantage of it on there. So that's a CB radio. All right. Let's touch on another one here real quick. We'll touch on it. There is marine radio. So marine radio, really restrictive in what you can or where you can't use it. Excuse me, I'm getting dry throat tonight. Where you can and can't use it. Obviously, can I use it in Mall of America? No, not unless the Mall of America flooded out and became the 10,001 Lake of Minnesota. So you can't walk around and use your marine radio in either water areas or ship to shore. So you can use it ship to ship, or you can use it ship to shore, or for shoreline activities dealing with ships. But you can't just go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to be driving through Minnesota, and Minnesota is the land of 10,000 lakes, so I can use marine band radio. No, it doesn't work. Does this mean that everybody follows the rule? No, it doesn't. Are there a lot of illegal users of marine band radio? Yes, there are. Reason being is marine band is in the VHF range. They do have some power limitations on there. I think it's 25 watts. I'm kind of trying to look through my nose here real quick, but yeah, it's 25 watts, no more than 25 watts. And then you should be able to lower your power to 1 watt or less, so it doesn't cause interference. Marine radio is channelized also. I think there's about 100 marine radio frequencies. They are in the 156, 160 range, 161 range in there. So the upper part of what we consider the VHF commercial band or public safety band up there and that. So, but they're divided up in those channels, easy for you to use. You select the channel, you go there. Certain channels are used for certain purposes on there. So once again, licensed by rule, but you really need to know the rules on which one you can and can't use on there. So if you're on a vessel, if you're on a ship, if you're out recreational boating, you have someone who's at the shore, and then you're out on the boat. Hey, marine radio might be that good one for you. All righty. And it may not. If you're going to be going further and you're going to be going more so on land than on the water by the shore, then marine radio may not be that one for you. Now we're going to jump to amateur radio. An amateur radio, because the last one we're going to talk about is business frequencies. But let's talk about amateur radio on there. So amateur radio, obviously, this is the one license class that is licensed by test. Everything else is licensed by use or licensed by payment, I guess we could say, for sake of a better term. So your GMRS, you have to pay for the license. But once again, FRS, MURS, CB radio, and Marine are all licensed by use. Amateur radio is not. Amateur radio is licensed by an exam, a test on there. You have to take the test on there. But what's unique about amateur radio, and I was just telling my daughter who's studying for her amateur radio test, if she's watching, honey, you can do it. I know you can do it. She's learning the theory. She's doing a good job. She's just not memorizing the answers. She's learning. I'm so proud of her on there. But the interesting part about it is that everything we talked to so far, FRS, GMRS, MURS, CB, and Marine, everything we've talked to so far has been channelized and licensed. So what basically says is you are on this channel, you are on this channel, you are on this channel. Okay. So with that being said on there, and that's a good cigar, by the way, Mr. Good Skills. I'm jealous of you tonight. What it's interesting about amateur radio is we are licensed to the band. We pick a frequency within the band based upon our license privileges. All righty. And I even have my little trusty book over here that goes ahead and shows you, hey, here's all the ones I made and stuff like that. That tells me the license classes. But that's so cool because I can be on any frequency in that band based upon my license class. I don't have to say, oh, wait a minute, I got my license for amateur radio. I can only be on, 3916, or I can only be on, 7.2, or, all those, you get what I'm saying. We're not licensed to the frequencies. So that's nice. But unlike the other radio classes and licenses that we talked about tonight here, everybody needs an amateur radio license. So if my family wanted to use amateur radio here, we would need to have an amateur radio license for all of us, myself, my wife, my kids. All righty. If someone doesn't have a license, then they can't legally talk to us on amateur radio, and I can't legally talk to them. Now, I'm not talking about third party or anything like that. I'm saying is if my wife is 10 miles that way and I'm here and my daughter is outside playing, if she doesn't have a license, no, she can't directly talk to my wife. I can't talk to her. You see what I'm saying? So, but amateur radio does give you that wide range of possibilities, more so than local communications. Let's face it, FRS, MURS, GMRS, CB, Marine, everything we're talking about, we're talking 10, 20, maybe 30 miles at most if we're using a repeater on GMRS, or if we're using the other bands or the other services, we're really simplex. We're really close to one another. Maybe 2 miles or something like that on there, right? So with that, amateur radio is going to allow us to talk around the world. It's going to allow us to talk across the United States. It's going to allow us to talk locally, however we want to do it. It's also going to allow us to talk in different modes too. Lots of the other modes are only voice, some limited data applications, but amateur radio, like they were just talking about FT8 on Coffee and Ham Radios just before their TO and Ham Radio Dude. They were talking about it on there. And with that, you could talk on digital modes using your computer. You could talk on digital voice modes. You could do a lot of things that you can't on those other radio services. So amateur radio is an option, but once again, it kind of gets down into that kind of tricky area of where you need a license and everything on there. So now we're going to talk about the last radio service. And this one is one that a lot of people, it's called the industrial business licensing. So yes, using these licenses, do you need to have an industrial or business purpose? Yes, you do, technically, by definition of what the license is. However, eligibility rules do exist. But for example, the operation of commercial activity, the operational and educational, philanthropic, or religious institutions, clergy activities, the operation of hospitals, clinics, and med associations. So there are specific eligibilities that do need to be established. However, those fall into certain different kind of things on there. So your church, if you're looking at a radio service, hey, I want to use a radio service for my church to take tours. Okay, I know a church that goes on, kind of takes their kids on field trips or stuff like that on there, or philanthropic. I know there's a tour group that will go ahead and take people to the Mall of America around winter time, Christmas time here and stuff like that, for them to be able to go and let people get out and shop. Numerous reasons. We can come up with a bunch of different reasons under the sun to get these frequencies. Now, once again, with industrial and business licensing, we are being licensed to the frequency. Okay. And in addition to that, when you're licensed to the frequency, you are restricted to certain things of the frequency. So you may be restricted to geographical usage. You may be restricted to power usage. You may be restricted to mode usage. But then you also have abilities which you don't in the other radio services. So you might be able to, with your business license, depending on how you have it licensed, you may be able to use encryption or coded transmissions legally. Like saying, hey, I'm going to pay for an AES 256 encryption key that if someone listens to it on the scanner, they're going to hear a bunch of hissing noise, or they're going to hear a if they're into digital, they might hear a kind of noise like that. And who's going to hear it? The other person on the other end of the radio that has the encryption key. All righty. You can use different modes in industrial and business licensing. You can use digital modes. So you can use P25. You can use DMR. You could use NextDen. There's different types of formats on there. You can use POXEG. You could do all these different things that are either restricted in other radio services or might be frowned upon in those other radio services. So that's where the industrial business pool kind of thing takes place. But industrial business licensing can be a little difficult. And the reason I say it's a little difficult is because you have to go through a frequency coordinator. It's not as simple as getting your GMRS license. And once you got your license, boom, you got your frequencies. You can use whatever frequency you want, wherever you want, whenever you want within the United States. MURS, FRS, CB, those are all there. I could use CB channel 19 in, Nevada as well as Wisconsin. And I could use FRS channel 14 in Illinois as well as California. They're all over the place. But industrial business licensing, that's when things change. And the reason that they change is because in this case, they have those restrictions on there. And you have to go through a frequency coordinator. And those frequency coordinators can be quite expensive. And there are certain specific frequency coordinators for specific frequency purposes. So there are frequency coordinators that deal with the petroleum industry, ones that deal with the power industry, one that deal with railroad coordination, okay? Ones that deal with just general business, ones that deal with forestry or logging services. And those frequencies can really be spaced out across anything. So you can have low band frequencies, you can have VHF frequencies, you can have UHF frequencies. I think there's still some 800 megahertz frequencies out there, but those are everything that you can do within a business license. So really, if we take a look at it, if we want to do really kind of the gambit of what we've been talking about here, if we think about it, business industrial frequencies allow you the most fortitude, okay, for what you want to do. high power versus low power, digital versus analog, encryption versus non-encryption, a wide variety of signaling methods and stuff your radios can do, and the beeps and the boops and all those kind of things like that. But you're really, per se, could be more restricted to areas of usage or licensed applications. Okay. Where if you go to the far end of like FRS and MURS and stuff like that, GB, also those kind of things, you start to move towards that. Those are really open. Those are really wide, as in like, hey, I can use them anywhere, but I'm restricted on power. I'm restricted on antenna height and everything on there. So that's kind of the trade-off. So where are we at? Did that make sense for you? I don't know. And really what it's going to do is kind of boil down to what you want to do, when you want to do it, and how you want to do it. My recommendation or kind of guidance that I like to give people. Now, once again, this is someone coming to me and saying, hey, John, what is your take on it? What should I use? If you are going to be using something where you're hiking, you're camping, you're walking around a mall or something like that, you need short range communications, you're going to be in close distance to one another, then I would suggest FRS for you as a user, or MURS. So FRS or MURS. Once again, licensed by use. Radios are very within reach, okay, is the way to put it. You can pretty much go ahead and search out there, amateur radio dealers, two-way radio dealers out there. A lot of them sell some sort of type of FRS or MURS type radios. If you need a little bit more power, or you're still doing those applications, but you maybe want to have a mobile radio now, or the ability to kind of switch and go back and forth, then look at GMRS. If you are actually doing a lot of transporting, okay, you're doing a lot of running on the highways, interstates, and stuff like that on there, doesn't hurt to have a CB radio to be able to communicate with one another. If you're looking for hobby, if you're looking for fun, if you're looking to do things, be able to talk on a lot more power, okay, amateur radio can easily go well above 50 watts. I mean, 100 watts, 200 watts, 1,000 watts, depending on the frequency and usage. Then obviously amateur radio is your choice. If you're going to be using your radios in a specific area for a specific purpose and for business or corporate or some sort of organized purpose, then I would suggest you look at the industrial or the business pool set of licenses or frequencies. Now, does that mean you have to settle on one and what you choose today is what you can use forever? No, not in the least. I have GMRS licenses. I have an amateur license. I have business licenses. They're all over the place because each type of situation may vary, and each type of situation may dictate that there has to be a different type of change of radio service usage as compared to going ahead and having one that covers everything or a blanket of everything on there. So, hey, I've been talking a lot. I went over my 30 minutes, but we had a lot to discuss, kind of delve deeply into there. I strongly suggest that if you want to know more about these radio services, let the FCC website be your friend. Once again, just Google or search in search engine. You can type in the license you want to use. Once again, I pulled everything directly tonight off the FCC communication website, fcc.gov/wireless/bureau division/mobility-division. And then you can go and break down everything in there. They discuss the rules too. So if you're like, hey, can I use this radio? Can I do this? What is an antenna restriction? What is a height restriction? It lists the rules for you there, and actually does do a good job in actually listing the rules for the parts of, part 95, part 90, part 97, and everything like that on there. So thank you to everyone. I know there were a lot of people that were popping into the chat tonight. Thank you very much for dropping in here. If you like it, hit subscribe. I will also go ahead and post our email address here. So if anybody does have any comments for the show or says, hey, I want you to be able to talk about this, it's going to be communication-cigars@jjkcom.com. So JJK Communications is our sponsor on there. We thank them for sponsoring us and being able to be on there. We'll go ahead and pop that up on there. Communications-cigars@jjkcom.com. If you have an idea for the show, if you want to see a topic covered, you want to do something like that, feel free to drop me a line on there. If you are watching this on the replay, hey, continue the discussion on there. Do not go ahead and be afraid to stop in there and get in there and say, hey, great topic. Continue the conversation on there. Hopefully the weather will get better soon and we'll be able to go and get back outside, at least in the garage, or get the studio set up. Just so everybody knows, we are working on some guests coming onto the show here in the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have some people on here discussing a wide variety of communications. And we are working on kind of a neat feature. We're going to be working on seeing if we can actually live stream the audio from the show. So if you can't catch it watching us on YouTube, we're working on it to see if you'll be able to live stream the audio so you can actually hear the show, sort of like how they do with football and baseball games where, hey, you could watch it on TV or you can listen to it on the radio. Stay tuned for more information on there. Until then, everybody, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Communications and Cigars 73. Stay safe and enjoy your cigars.